Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And on behalf of the Village of Cary and the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on this Thursday, January the 9th, 2025. The time is approximately 7 p.m. We have a quorum of members.
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Thank you, Mr. Graziano. Just so you're aware that normally our meetings did begin at 7 p.m., and now they're beginning at 6 p.m. to start off the new year. So at this time, I'll ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Brian Simmons, to call the roll.
Kessler,
Here.
Graziano,
Here.
Trandell,
Here.
Kretschmer,
Here.
O'Laughlin, Williams,
Here.
Corey.
Here. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to rise with us for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Well, thanks, everyone. Before we begin with our first application, I do have a couple of comments that I want to make. I want to first and foremost welcome Mayor Koenig to our ZPA meeting. And Mayor, I want to say thank you to you and to all the elected officials for the support and assistance that you provide to this committee. We especially appreciate being able to do our work independently without any pressure or reprisal for our decision-making. So if you'll accept our thanks, and we thank you for your leadership in that regard, it's sincerely appreciated.
We thank you for your service. We couldn't do what we do without you. Your dedication is awesome.
Thank you, Mayor. And I also want to welcome Julie Cassiter to the regular role now of ZPA member. Julie was the 8th associate member, and now she's in the new role of regular member. So congratulations and well done. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
And I do want to publicly say thank you to Patrick Jasper, one of our members that we've worked with for many, many years, has resigned his role on the ZPA. So we do have an opening for the 8th associate member. So if anyone's interested, please let the mayor know, and we'll take it from there. And I really think it's important for me to say thank you to all the ZPA members here. For those of you that are unaware, I typically say that the members that are up here are the unsung heroes of our community, because a lot of people don't understand the work that they do. It tends to be technical in nature. But if you need a variance on your garage, you'll know what they do very quickly. And these folks come here prepared each and every meeting, very sharp-minded, do their hard work of reading the applications well in advance, keep the chair on their toes when they make a mistake. Thank you very much. And I just want to publicly say thank you to each and every one of you for the great work that you do. And one of the things that we're going to talk about tonight, unbeknownst to all of you, is that one of our members, Commissioner Graziano, is celebrating his 40th anniversary as a ZPA member. Yeah.
Call me Mike.
And I have to tell you that I've worked with Mr. Graziano now since I began my journey on the ZPA back in 2006. And when we were in the old Village Hall, I used to sit next to Mr. Graziano where Neil is. And I remember on more than one occasion leaning over to Mr. Graziano and saying, I have no idea what we're talking about. And Mr. Graziano, having the great sense of humor that he does, that I've grown to love, would tell you that to this day, I still don't know what I'm talking about. So, Jim, I really want to just take a moment to say, I've really grown to appreciate the work that you've done for us on this committee. I know you to be a man of character and integrity. I've really grown to admire the faith-based person that you are. Mr. Graziano's been married for plus 60 years, at least, with Priscilla. And just a great asset to have on this committee, because when push comes to shove, if we need a precedent to understand where was the village many years ago, we all turn to Jim, and he'll be able to help us understand where things were and where they are today. So just a great asset to our committee. But Jim, I just want to say thank you for all of the friendship and being a great colleague to all of us on the committee. Congratulations on 40th anniversary. I don't think we'll see that again on this committee, so congratulations. And maybe I could turn it over to Mayor Koenig now for some additional comments.
You gotta turn it underneath it.
I'm taking his microphone. There we go. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure on behalf of the Village Board and the Village of Cary to congratulate Jim on 40 years. That's 4 decades. I can't even imagine. You have seen so many transformations from our humble little village. And one thing that we've always pressed on is to continue with the character that we've had all throughout the community. And I owe it to your steadfast desire to keep our community the way we see it moving forward. And it's important that we have that history behind us. There are things that come up all the time, and people don't realize that there are processes and procedures in place to get things done. We work with codes and ordinances. We have all these rules that we have to follow. Everybody thinks that they can come in and do these things, but they can't. We like to have rule and order in the community, and this is where developers come and start. You know, we've got a couple big cases that you guys we're going to be throwing your way in a matter of months too. So we appreciate that. So, like I do at all of our board meetings, when we have an employee or something that needs to be recognized, Jim, would you come up here and join me, please?
You guys are bad.
Yeah, that's us, Jim.
This is the most well-dressed man. We belong to Saints Peter and Paul together too, and this guy is always dressed to the spirit, down to his socks. Right? Yes, back in the day. But thank you very much. It's an honor and privilege to have you represent the Village of Cary. Your professionalism, your dedication to the successes of our community is top-notch. You know, what comes through here offers sustainability, meaningful sustainability to the village. We look at things very realistically and holistically, and what we think is the best for the village, and how their job is how individual things, how you can fit a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole. So we try to work very well with the ZPA. So we've got the great confidence to the point where they can make decisions here that could really just be approved through them, and we just move that through the board. So we have great confidence in there. So on behalf of the Village of Cary, a couple things. We have a plaque. Who doesn't love a plaque? Presented to James Graziano in recognition of 40 years. This was supposed to be done over the summer or last fall, but there hasn't been a lot of cases here. So staff, in their ingenious way, added 40 and a half years of dedication service to the Board of Zoning Appeals, Planning and Appeals for the Village of Cary. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Hold on. Bet you don't have one of these. How's that, huh? He's got some Cary swag. We sell these too. I think they're like $25. It's a deal. And I'm known throughout the region. I do a lot of other mayoring things, and I always have my Cary pin. I'm only supposed to have one, but I have 3.
Okay, now I have 2.
Now you have 2. Well, I'm going to keep this. No, but there's, and this is just a card. So thank you very much for everything that you do. We greatly appreciate it. And congratulations. Here's to the next 40.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mayor Koenig, and congratulations, Jim. Well done.
Thank you, gentlemen and ladies, everyone. Just a couple comments. One, I remember this is not Arlington Heights or Palatine, and thank God it's not Fox River Grove either.
Attaboy, Jim.
No, what I love about this community is we get things that happen all the time. We get a lot of developers interested in us, but we maintain the integrity of what we want our community to be. We still want to be cutting edge. We still want to offer things to new people, but we also want to maintain the small town. So part of their process is to help us do that. So I don't attend ZPA meetings, so I'm going to exit stage left and let them do the business that they normally do. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks again, Mayor Koenig. Yeah. All right, folks, so we'll begin our meeting now, and thank you for indulging us for a few minutes. I know some of you have been to these meetings before, and perhaps some of you haven't, so I'll try to give you the overview of what we do tonight. Mr. Simmons here, to my left, your right, is going to give us an overview of the application, and then upon conclusion, members of the ZPA may have some questions for Mr. Simmons. Once we conclude that portion, we'll turn the discussion over to the petitioner, and they're welcome to add more color to the application that they think is appropriate. And then once we conclude that portion, we open it up to the public. Now, I know many of you here to comment on tonight's application. The way we ask you to do this is when you approach the podium, and that mic is live, by the way, we ask you to state your name and address for the record. If you're unaware, these meetings do get recorded, so the folks that can't be here tonight can see them at a future date and time, including our elected officials. Just so you're aware, when we go through the public comment portion of the meeting, it's not designed like you see on television where you ask a question and we're responding back to you, or you're asking the petitioner a question and they're responding back to them. It's not designed that way. However, what we will do, we'll ask the petitioner to catalog the questions that are asked, and then we'll ask them to do a rebuttal, if they choose to, on the comments they've received tonight. That's kind of that process. And then once we conclude the public comment portion, members of the ZPA that are assembled here may have questions amongst themselves. Then we'll call a vote on the motion, and then we deliver that motion back to the elected officials. So that's our process. So before I move forward on one administrative matter, does anyone have any questions on our process tonight? Especially the petitioner? Please? Yeah, all of what we're going to do tonight, you'll see in just a few minutes that when we do the application, it's all going to show on the screens around the room, so you'll be able to see it. Okay, so for the ZPA committee themselves, we have 2 meeting minutes. The last time we met, as you recall, was actually back in July. And this is meeting minutes for the Cary Avenue rear yard setback variance, and then subsequently the Industrial Drive comprehensive plan amendment and map amendment. So unless we have any comments or changes to those meeting minutes, the chair via voice vote will ask for approval of those 2 meeting minutes. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting minutes approved. And at this time, I will call Village Case 24 ZPA 12001. This is for Dandelion Development, and this is going to be for Scott Sager. The location is 401 Haber Road here in Cary. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Simmons, for the overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My computer is not operating. There we go.
All right.
Yes, as this is mentioned, the case requested this evening is for a amendment to the Harper Point Plan Unit Development. I'll go through a brief history for the property and how the development came to where we're at this evening, and then an overview of the proposed modifications to the PUD as presented. I always like to give a history slide as far as the subject property. This site has gone through quite a bit of changes over the years. In 1957, the former office building, which is now the 2-story apartment complex, was originally constructed on the site, and then was utilized for a laboratory type operation. In the late 80s, the majority of the property on the east side of Cary Algonquin Road was subdivided as part of the Cary Oak subdivision, which now is comprised of 6 separate developments, as indicated in the slide, including the Santa Point subdivision, 53 single-family detached lots, the Haber Court townhomes, Harper Avenue townhomes, and the Cary Oaks Plaza to the north side of Harper Avenue. And then the recently approved Cary Horizon Senior Living Project, which will be constructed in 2025 along Cary Algonquin Road. And then the subject property, the Harper Point PUD, which is comprised of 2 different phases. Focusing specifically on that 6 parcel, in 1997, the parcels were zoned to B4 for a business development that did not occur in the area. But then the portion, which is the 4 duplexes, which are currently constructed, was rezoned in early 2004 to R3 multifamily, again, for a project that was not constructed. But in 2008, the Haber Oaks building, which is the school building, was rezoned to the R1 district for the former high school use that was in the facility. And then most recently, the project, which is currently under construction on the project, or the site, was approved in 2 different phases. In 2015, the Harper Point PUD was approved for phase 1, which consisted of 4 duplex buildings. that face onto Harper Avenue with their access point off of Haber Road. And then in 2019, a second phase was approved as the developer acquired an additional parcel that expanded the project, and that was approved in 2019 when the first two duplexes on the first phase were currently under construction. So this exhibit here shows the two phases that were approved as part of the project. Again, phase one was the first 4 duplex buildings that front onto Harper Avenue. Again, the developer originally had that parcel under contract, and then they were able to acquire the school building from District 155 in 2019, and then expanded the project to include the conversion of that building to senior apartments and the construction of additional duplexes around the property. Following completion of phase one and the conversion of the school building to apartments, the developer actually sold the remaining portion of phase two to the petitioner, which is present here this evening. And that petitioner is looking to complete the project as approved with some changes that are presented here this evening. And then they can provide some additional information as far as the reason for those changes as well, but their intent is to complete the project to the extension that the village board had granted to the developer by December of this year, of December 25. So the amendments that are proposed this evening are summarized on the slide, which consist of the conversion of 6 duplex units, which currently front onto Haber Road. The plan is to convert that to an 8-unit townhome structure. They're also looking to modify existing surface and garage parking spaces on the property for the apartment complex. There is a proposed reduction to a setback along Haber Road, and also a proposal to remove the age restriction on the apartment building with other site plan modifications. Just a reminder, within the Unified Development Ordinance, there's various regulations for the planned unit developments as far as the code allows for developments that are over 2 acres in size or for multifamily development to go through a plan development process that allows for more flexibility in design in nature, so that it does allow for creative elements as far as how a project may be developed that may be more efficient use of land or preserve natural features and different elements. This project was approved as part of right after the UDO was updated and was one of the first PUDs that we adopted through this process. This slide shows both the approved plan in 2019 versus the proposed revisions as currently here, and I'll go through in more detail what the requests are to modify the plans as indicated in the previous slide, but the focus specifically on the proposed changes. The first request is to reduce a setback for Lot 1 of one of the duplexes, which is closer to the end of Haber Road. As the original PUD was approved with a 20-foot setback along Haber Road, the building at Lot 1 had, if you can see in the image, a small notch that was kind of taken out of it to maintain that setback. The developer is requesting a variance to allow that structure to encroach an additional 5 feet just for that small portion of the building, so that the same footprint of the structure can be constructed as the other duplex units contemplated for the project. So the majority of the 20-foot setback would remain along Haber Road. It would just be a small encroachment for that small corner, that one corner of that Lot 1 structure. Second proposed change is to convert the remaining duplexes that face onto Haber Road from a duplex structure to a townhome building. It would also add 2 additional units, so the net increase of 2 units would be added to the project with that change. The modifications for this plan would actually decrease the length of the building as far as front to back elevation. So the petitioner is able to make some other modifications to the plan related to site circulation on site. Specifically, those changes would be to modify the planned configuration for the main drive aisle in front of the apartment complex. As originally contemplated, the drive aisle was a one-way circulation, which entered off of Haber Road to the left of the 3 duplex buildings, and then had a counterclockwise circulation and exited out of the Phase 1 driveway onto Haber Road. The petitioner is proposing to modify that plan to create a two-way drive aisle so that vehicles can both enter and exit off of the center access point to Haber Road and have access to revised garages and parking spaces in that area. Additionally, they're proposing that the connection between the Phase 1 and Phase 2 portions of the site remain only as the emergency vehicle access connection between the two parcels. This slide shows the proposed elevations for the townhouse building. It would be 8 units combined consistently across with porches and front access facing Haber Road, and then there'd be garage access in the rear facing the interior of the development. This slide here shows the proposed floor plans and again the elevations as contemplated for that portion. Other site plan modifications are to the existing or planned parking facilities on site. As part of the original development plan, there were accessory structures or accessory garages that were proposed to be constructed on the property. The current petitioner is seeking to modify the plan to make changes to the location of those garages and surface parking. So the areas, as indicated in the slide, in the rear of the site that faces towards Cairo Algonquin Road, Area 1 has a mixture of both surface and garage spaces were originally planned. The petitioner is planning to convert that area to all surface parking and relocate some of those garages to the front portion of the site into Area 2. So again, additional surface parking will be added and with the garage building that will be constructed there of 8 garage units. They would also have parking in front of those garage spaces large enough for additional vehicles to park in that area. The other area that's has some planned modifications is the Area 3, which is garages that were originally approved off of the access drive for the Phase 1 of the development. The petitioner is proposing to set those back further from the property line to maintain 5 parking spaces there, but also have vehicular access in front of the garages for better maneuverability into the site. Finally, one of the last changes as requested is the petitioner is seeking to modify the occupant restrictions for the apartment complex. As the board may recall, the original plan had the apartment building only in the development, with a restriction for individuals age 55 and older. The duplex and townhouse buildings did not have that age restriction. It was just specifically to the apartment complex. So they are proposing to remove that age restriction as originally approved. The main change that modification would impact would be within our code is the parking requirements for the project. Under our code, senior housing projects have a parking space requirement of 1 space per unit, whereas a multifamily structure without an age restriction has a 2.25 spaces per unit requirement. So the table in the upper right-hand corner shows the proposed and required parking for a development, and it looks at both the combination of both Phase 1 and Phase 2 as how the project was originally approved with both phases was one PUD. So Phase 1 has the 8 units with 16 garage spaces for parking in that portion of the project for the single-family attached homes. And then for Phase 2, as proposed, there will be 16 total units with 32 garage spaces in those units. And then the apartments, the 24 units, with the non-age restricted requirement would require 54 parking spaces. Based on the current plan, there are 58 spaces that are proposed, which include both the garage and surface parking spaces. That is a change from the staff report. I did notice that there was an error. My calculations counted one extra space. So the total parking provided on the site would be 106 spaces across both phases and both phase 1 and phase 2. The site will also comply with the lot coverage requirements. When the project was originally approved, the village had approved a lot coverage of 55% for the site. There were some modifications to the site plan through the permitting process where the previous developer was able to utilize permeable pavers for parking lot areas. That was able to reduce the lot coverage based on our requirements for the use of those materials. So currently the site has a proposal of lot coverage around 47%. Again, this just shows the two plans as originally approved and contemplated side by side. As with any project that is contemplated, there are various standards that are reviewed for plan developments, which are summarized on the slide. As the village previously has approved the plan or approved a PUD for the site, originally the board did determine that standards had been met in this case, but obviously the proposed amendment does modify the existing conditions of those approvals, but specifically looking at how the proposed project complies with the general conformance with the comprehensive plan, parking and traffic, and impact on other properties are typically things that are reviewed as part of those standards. Additionally, with proposed modifications for any departures, the PUD ordinance looks at how those integrate overall with the overall design of the project, if they are change the nature of the locality at all, and how parking and drives and circulation are affected by the proposed modification standards. So with the case, the petitioner did provide information related to their petition. They can also provide additional commentary as well to why they're proposing the changes. But in the subject case, should the ZPA determine that the various standards in this case have been met, it is recommended the ZPA recommend to the village board approval of an amendment to the Harper Point planned unit development, subject to the conditions that are listed in the staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions the ZPA may have.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And something I neglected to do earlier is to say what an asset you are to this committee as a business partner on behalf of the village. He's always very prepared and gives us a great overview to get this process moving forward, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, questions for Mr. Simmons?
I didn't see anything regarding greenery or any change in that placement or anything.
So there's a landscape plan as part of their proposal. But yes, the overall modifications to the landscape plan would not really significantly change. There's obviously with the conversion of the duplexes to the townhome building, that would modify that portion of the site, but they still have landscaping proposed around the building.
Yeah, no big changes.
Yep.
Anyone else? Mr. Kretschmer? No? All right, so if there's no questions, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward, and you're welcome, sir, to make any additional comments that you think are appropriate to the petition. Welcome.
My name is Scott Seeger. I'm the petitioner, I think.
Welcome.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Brian, for your very detailed review. And the only things I wanted to add was that the main reasons that we wanted to make the changes to the PUD were we weren't seeing a lot of demand for the two-bedroom units in the apartment building. So there's a lot of demand for the one-bedroom units, but we still have, to this day, I think they started leasing the property in the fall of '23, and we still have a two-bedroom apartment that originally that hasn't leased yet, and it's market rate. There's definitely been a very weak demand for the two-bedroom units, and that's the reason we're trying to make this change to add the parking to allow for the additional you know, additional potential tenants for the property. The other second primary benefit, I think, to like making this change is to eliminate the one-way road going on to our neighbor's driveway or kind of a shared road, and have all the traffic go primarily off onto Haber Road. And, you know, so those were the two main reasons for making the changes to the PUD. You know, Brian, I think, laid out everything that kind of explains, you know, how we did that. You know, we went from 6 duplexes to 8 smaller townhomes, so we could, you know, get the additional parking in there. And as opposed to the previous or the original PUD plan, all of the traffic, or potentially all of the traffic, would have been going onto the shared drive between our property and the Phase 1 property. You know, that will just be strictly for emergency vehicles. And then there's a 5 parking garage unit that was originally in the original plan that would still stay there, and that would be the only people that would be kind of our people from our development that would be accessing that common or shared road. You know, we feel like there's, you know, with the new development coming next door, there's a lot of, you know, senior housing. You know, we have 55 plus. It's not necessarily senior, but we would like to open this up to you know, any age group to fill up the 2-bedroom apartments in the property. And we've met all the requirements, I think, as far as, you know, design, landscaping, parking. So I think the primary benefits, limited access to the shared easement road. You know, we're only proposing a 5-car garage that was already there. And then the added on-site parking to modify, you know, our usage of the apartment building. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer questions for the board or for the homeowners as well.
Thank you, Mr. Seeger. So we'll start with the ZPA committee. Questions from the ZPA? So the way we'll probably do this, Mr. Seeger, as I was mentioning before, is that when the public comes up to comment, and I'm assuming that they're going to want to comment, if you wouldn't mind cataloging some of those questions, because it's really not designed for them to ask you a question, then you respond back. I think that the way we proceed here to keep it organized is if you wouldn't mind cataloging the questions that are asked, and then we'll give you the opportunity at the conclusion of the comments to come back and respond to those.
Sure.
Does that sound fair?
Be happy to do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Seeger.
Thanks.
Okay, so folks, I know all of you are assembled here potentially to offer comments. So again, when you approach the mic, if you just wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record. It does get recorded. And then, as I mentioned, we'll ask Mr. Seeger to respond to those comments upon conclusion. Okay? So over to you. Whoever would like to go first. Oh, we got a list here. All right. So the first one that signed in, we have a Mr. Bob Bailey. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, good evening. Bob Bailey, 765 Harper. And on your first map, they're showing Phase 1. I was the first person to move into Phase 1 in April of 2019. And at that time, I was told that the driveway behind my building was eventually going to be connected all the way around behind the existing school building at that time for a fire department access. We were also told we we're going to have U.S. mail delivery coming in our driveway. In fact, mailboxes were put up, and we were told that garbage trucks would be coming into our driveway behind our individual garages to pick up our garbage. Anyways, none of those three things ever occurred. The driveway going all the way around behind the old school building for the fire department access never occurred. The mail never came in there. They will not deliver it in there. I had to go to the post office, pick up my mail for a long time. And the garbage never went in there. So here we are now today, and all four of those structures are completed in Phase 1, 8 duplex units. Myself, one owner, and 4, 5, 6 of them behind us here. There's 8 of us all together. We own that driveway, which is 17 feet wide and goes behind all our buildings. We maintain that driveway. We buy a liability insurance policy on that driveway. Our whole total land is 1.3 acres. And phase one's done. So there's a few questions. One question is, when do we get removed? I understand planning and development goes way back, but when do we get removed from this thing and our land not be included in impervious surface, parking, density? So we are not any way associated with this 401 Haber building. Now, our goal today is not to have any more pedestrian or vehicle traffic from the 401 Haber complex, phase 2, if you'd like to call it, onto our driveway. Any more pedestrian or vehicle traffic, whether it's emergency vehicle or 5 garages, is dangerous. Keep in mind the driveway is 17 feet wide, it's private, it's owned by us, it's not a public roadway. There are no sidewalks, public or private. The driveway is used by myself and all the owners, walking, pedestrian, walking dogs, driving our vehicles, taking our 16 garbage cans down that whole driveway every Tuesday morning to sit there and wait and get picked up, 16 garbage cans back, Tuesday night or Wednesday morning when everybody decides to bring their cans back up. There's currently, in our 8 units, there's currently 3 disabled people living in the complex. I'm not a medical person, but they're obvious. 3 of them have walking type issues. One to the point that that individual's permanently in a wheelchair. Now, the RTA, suburban RTA system brings a pace bus every once in a while and picks that person up in the complex. So the proposed emergency access road is, at this point, totally unnecessary. The same as the original one going back to 2019 that was proposed to go behind the driveway, behind the school building around, never occurred. So at that time, the Deputy Chief, Scott Pelletro of the Cary Fire Protection District, they were able to work out that the fire department now has access from Haber Road way on the far south side of phase 2 to get behind that building. That was worked out. Now, in the last month, I've talked to the fire department several times, and this emergency access road was not asked by them. They don't need it. If it's there, they may use it, they may never use it. We, at this time, are asking that his new 2-way parking behind the proposed townhomes end at our lot line with a curb, signage if you need it, no exit signage, whatever, but do not extend onto our driveway. Especially the fire department doesn't need it. I spoke to the fire department, they can get in and out, they said there's no problem. The other thing is the garages, the 5 garages, and it's a little confusing. I've seen some maps that look like they're built on a lot line, some looks like there's a setback. If they're to be built, we'd like to make sure there's a setback, 5, 6, 8 feet, whatever the village rules are. And to cut down on pedestrian traffic onto our driveway for anybody going to enter one of those 5 garages, we would suggest that rear service doors be put in those garages. The last picture I saw showed a small, like a casement type window. You could remove the casement window and put a rear service door in, so someone coming from 401 Haber would be able to enter and exit those garages via doorway, the service door, 32, 36-inch service door, whatever, and not walk onto our 17-foot driveway, which our whole reason for this is any more traffic, pedestrians, vehicles, emergency vehicles, whatever, is a hazard onto our driveway that we own, that we're writing an insurance we cover insurance coverage for, and we just soon not have any more traffic onto our driveway. Now, it was brought up, they had some things on the board. We'd ask that the board please read and pay attention to your plan unit development standards, your plan development modification standards, as far as traffic, safety, sidewalks, no sidewalks, all the things I mentioned earlier. If the board does recommend to the village board to approve this plan as it is, we would ask that our homeowners association also be included with the fire department when they would speak with the builder, Mr. Seeger, as reference to this access road, if you want that access road. I believe Brian, in his preliminary notes to you folks, said that prior to permits being issued, the fire department and the developer would get together for modifications, whatever. We would like to be included in that. That's if you people make a recommendation. Our recommendation is it never even happens. And I believe, Brian, as much as you put in your preliminary notes that the fire department approves the plan as submitted, which they do. They approve the plan as submitted. However, I believe you will admit that they also told you that they don't need it, they didn't request it, and it may or may not ever be used. So if that's the case, then let's not even do it. Save Mr. Seeger some time and money, make some people happy that live in those 8 duplexes there, and let's not even build it. We also request that if the 5 garages are to be built, that prior to permits being issued for the garages, our homeowners association also be included to discuss snow plowing, parking, maintenance, things like that. Any questions, or?
No, Mr. Billy. I'm taking notes, and I think we've asked Mr. Seeger to capture your comments and
Okay.
hopefully respond to your questions.
Okay,
So thank you very much.
you're welcome.
So if we have anyone else out there that would like to comment further, you're welcome to approach. I have a list here. I have forgive me, because I'm not, is it Kevin Murray?
Yes, sir.
Did you want?
That captured my thoughts, thank you.
Okay, very good. And then also I have a Brian Mulville. Welcome.
Brian Mulville, 885 Harper Court. Couple questions just to refresh when this whole thing started with the first builders. The school building that was redone right now, that's a still maintained 55 and older status?
Yes, it was approved as a 55 and older.
Are they wanting to petition to change that and remove that also?
Yes.
No good. Plus the 55, it feels like a bait and switch. It's just the old bait and switch. Standing with that original builder, don't worry, this doesn't conform anyway. And the proposal of the tremendous amount of population is just mind-boggling. Doesn't conform at all to the neighborhood. There's other people that wanted to attend. I could get a petition, but it just, you're told one thing. So you go, okay, kind of go with this and go with that. And now the additional number of cars, people being jammed in there, it does not conform. Right now, people, my wife in particular, she doesn't even go down to that 7-Eleven if it's wet or rainy. With the cars zipping by and the people coming in and out, he gave an excellent presentation. So, and this new apartment building, is that the townhomes that he wants to do? Is that gonna be for sale or for rent? He's gonna own it and rent them?
Well, what we're going to do, Mr. Melville, is we're asking Mr. Sager, he's capturing your comments,
Well,
and
I
we're
just-
going,
well, what's he asking?
well, we're going to ask him personally, we're going to ask
Well, I
him to
don't know if
respond
I'm
to
gonna
this.
Stay to the very end, but right now, is the proposal that they're gonna sell all those units, or are they gonna own them and rent them out?
I can't respond to that, I'll have to ask the petitioner. Yeah.
I thought that would have been common knowledge what they're wanting to do.
Well, that's not the purview of this committee. That's the purview of the petitioner of how he wants to.
Well, it makes a difference too, if you have one owner owning those and just renting them all out versus individual owners.
Sure,
That's huge.
I agree.
I think the whole thing is terrible. It doesn't conform with the area. It's jamming people in there. The traffic, I question that people could come in, additional cars. Would those properties be open into Section 8 rental, those type of things, if that was to be approved?
That's not my understanding of this application,
Well,
sir.
Would that be a possibility?
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, if so, that wouldn't be a possibility with Kerry's rules and regs, or,
I think that would have been part of their original application.
okay. Well, what I'm saying is, this whole thing just seems like a bait and switch. I worried about it from the beginning. Our neighbors, we all gathered in the first home built in the phase 1. Nice meeting, no, don't worry, everything's gonna be, 55 and older. We're gonna do this building here, but everything is gonna be laid out. And now it's all going to no age restriction, overpopulation. To me, seeing developments like this, there's just a lot of loose control. And, I would ask the petitioner, why is it that he wants to, he's having trouble with a rental of a two-bedroom unit. Why is that our problem? Did he overpay for the building? Is he asking too much for the rent? All our costs, we're all struggling with things that have happened. But it shouldn't be put on us that the fact that, hey, some of the things come down in taxes and different things. It shouldn't be our problem if he's having problems with rental. So all these things need to be taken into consideration. It's infuriating. So I'd be happy to bring back a petition at another meeting, but, his problems don't necessarily need to be our problems. It doesn't conform. And I just feel strongly that it was a bait and switch. See it over and over, so.
Thank you, Mr. Melville.
I'd like to get the answer to what his plans are for the 8 units, whether they're gonna own it, and
We're going to try to get there in just a moment. Before I turn it back over to Mr. Sager, is there anyone else here that would like to comment further on the application? Okay, so, Mr. Sager, I think you heard some of the comments, and so this is your opportunity to kind of respond to those questions that were just asked specifically from Mr. Bailey and Mr. Melville.
So, yeah, just on the notes I took, so the driveway, I understand that, it's owned by the 8 units to the north, but it is an easement. It's part of the PUD. It's not like we're like forcing anybody. And we created a shared cost arrangement too, so it's not been defined yet, but, definitely depending on how development goes forward, we would share in the cost of insurance and snow removal and all of the things of using that roadway. So it's not like we're just gonna use the roadway and not pay our fair share for that. The emergency access, we added that in just because from our engineer's perspective, that's gonna be a requirement. It's typical that a fire truck needs to get in and out. They may be able to get, if it's possible, we're more than happy to just not do that and just landscape that. That's but that's up to the fire department. Where the design there is just meant to meet the building code and be, meet what emergency vehicles need to be able to get in and out. I don't think they typically want to, pull in and back out, because it's pretty difficult for a fire truck to back out of and the only reason that we have that that exit ability is for a fire truck to be able to get out of there, once they get in there. But if the fire department says we don't need that, we'll just close that off at the lot line. That'll all just be landscaping, so that there's really no issue there, and I think that would make everybody happy. The 5 garages, they're part of the plan either way, so if, we don't go ahead with this plan, we would build the other plan. The garages would be there regardless. The other plan just shows a lot more traffic going onto that shared roadway. So, that was what was purchased, that's what was in the PUD, that's what we would go ahead with. So I think, in my opinion, I think the new plan is better, but, it's up to, the board, zoning commission, owners have their opinions, I'm sure. And the townhomes would be, so they're, obviously zoned multifamily. Our intent is to own and rent them. The rental would be high, probably $2,700 to a little over $3,000 a month. It's market rate rent. There's no Section 8. Very nice townhomes, nice finishes, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage. These are not meant to be rented to low income. They're pretty nice units. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions if anyone's got any.
Well, Mr. Melville's raising his hand. So Mr. Melville, I think it'll help because it's recorded, if you wouldn't mind coming up and just stating your question next to each other so we can hear it for the people that are not able to be here tonight.
I just didn't hear whether he said he planned on owning those buildings or selling them.
No, own them. Yeah,
You're
own
gonna
them
own
and
them to
rent
rent 'em.
them, and
Own them to
rent would be like $2,700 to
You know what?
$3,300 a month.
It's a profit thing, right? It's a profit thing.
Sure. Yeah,
So we're asked to take on all this additional population, the hassles that come with it, and I failed to say that so many people drive, they don't even drive down to that 7-Eleven. If the roads are wet, the way it is now with the traffic, you can't get in or out of there. Maybe it'll be traffic light, but the whole thing comes down. It's a profit thing. It just irritates me. They're not doing what they said. It doesn't conform to the whole neighborhood that goes forever. That whole, and it's just wrong, I think.
The only thing I'd like to point out is we're talking about two additional units. So it's not, it's a fairly large development, and we're going from 6 to 8. But
Mr. Sager, I think from where I sit here as the chair, and the ZPA members are probably going to have some additional questions, but I think what we have here is a little bit of a hybrid model because there was a previous developer and then you're now involved. It's been my experience here as a chair of the committee that traditionally when a developer comes forward, they present to the village board, as the Mayor Koenig was alluding to earlier tonight, and then it gets to us for some relief. But in the middle of that, what traditionally happens is the developer goes to the people that are potentially going to be purchasing or talking to the citizens of the community, saying, here's what I'm thinking. And I think we have a situation here tonight where it's kind of after the fact, right? You're in the middle of this now, and we have the residents that are part of this process. And so it would be my humble suggestion, sir, there might be some value in maybe postponing tonight's request to go back and meet with the residents to have a further discussion, because it sounds like there's some concerns. And it's through no fault of your own. You're in the middle of it now. There was a previous developer. Now you're the developer of the next section two, the next development associated with this. And I think there's enough questions here that are giving people pause for thought. And I think, in my opinion, most of the time when people sit down and talk through the issues, they come to a resolution of some consequence. And so I think that would help everybody involved, because there's clearly a lot of questions on people's mind through no fault of anyone's. I think it's just the process. And so traditionally, if you were here tonight, you would have already had this discussion with potential residents. But that wasn't the case for you because it happened in the middle. So we leave that to your discretion, sir, and it's up for you to make that decision. It's not up to me.
Sure. And we did meet with the residents, the 8 units to the north of us, and reviewed the plan prior to submitting it.
Okay, so let me take this opportunity then to ask members of the ZPA if they have additional questions for the petitioner. No? Julie? No? Okay. Okay, Mr. Simmons, did you want to make a comment?
I was just going to ask Mr. Seeger if he did have the conversations. I know they did have some discussions with the neighbors after he purchased it, in which he did allude to that they did have some conversations from that standpoint too. Previously, obviously, this project, previous developers is no longer in the picture. Mr. Seegers purchased the Phase 2 portion of it. His petition here this evening is intending to try to complete the project in a different fashion than what was originally approved, but certainly is looking to try to address some of the issues that exist on the property. To Mr. Bailey's point, I did have a conversation with the fire district regarding the emergency access point. It seems like that is not a connection that they need from that standpoint. So if it is there, they would utilize it, obviously, from that standpoint. But if it were to not be provided, they still would be able to service the property as designed. And that was consistent with the drive aisle that was behind the development in the first phase when it originally was proposed. That drive aisle was to connect, as Mr. Bailey mentioned, a loop through there to connect in the rear portion of the site. That was changed through the zoning process, but fire is comfortable with the accessing the property and backing out for the issues that they may have on that site. So the connection they've indicated is not something that is necessarily needed for the project from their standpoint to be in place.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. I appreciate the clarification. Okay, so folks, just to help us organize here so that we don't have one-way conversations, I don't have any problem with people speaking with each other, but you got to come to the mic so we can record it, so we can understand what the discussion is.
He just asked about the back doors to the garages, and it's possible. I don't know if it's a good idea, just because it would be hard for people to get around their parked car to get to a door, and we'd have all these doors. I mean, I don't know what the issue would be with just letting people come out of their garage and walk around to get back to the apartment building, but.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Simmons, I just want to double check with regard to the fire department. I'm trying to spin through all of the things that we're saying that were subject to the matters. Was that one of the conditions? Because there's many.
Yeah, so one of the conditions, and thank you for the question, from when the staff report was drafted, I did have a conversation with the district. One of the conditions is condition number 5 in the staff report, is that the final design of emergency cross-access to Phase 1 of the Harper Point PUD shall be coordinated with the Cary Fire Protection District prior to the issuance of a building permit, and that the access, if, that final design, if it is something that is there, that they need to approve that, and that connection would always be maintained free of obstruction. If the district no longer requires that, that would just be still consistent with the final design of that would be per their conditions. So if it is not required, then that area could be landscaped and not have that connection there. So I'm fine with the language as is if the board wants to modify it at all, as if required or not, but it's still basically to say at the permit stage, they can make that determination if it is necessary or not to have that connection.
Okay, I got it. Thank you very much. All right, folks, before I call the vote then, I just want to double check. Mr. Sager, did you have another comment? Yeah.
Just a couple of other ideas too. We, like the 5-car garage that's kind of in question here, we're open to eliminating that completely, but then that reduces the amount of parking that we have. And, if the village is willing to approve the project without that you know, meeting the 2.25 parking, then, you know, we can just eliminate that garage completely.
Well, what would that do for us? We'll take it
On the
down.
map. I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
If we take that, then be from 106 to 101, so it'd be one under.
I would take it down
Well, it's
10 spaces.
Or 10 spaces,
Yeah,
because
Correct,
you have the
because you have the
there.
two in space,
Right.
yes.
Yeah.
So that would
So
give.
go to 44 and bring you to maybe like two and an eighth or something per unit.
Yeah, the change for the phase two, if that garage were to be completely eliminated, would go from a total of 58 parking spaces, as evidence in this table, down to 48. So that would still provide 2 spaces per unit for the apartment complex.
We'd be six short then, yeah.
And could you just, I don't know if you have any information related to the parking demand in the units that you have now? Is there multiple vehicles per unit,
So-
or?
Yeah, currently as the building is leased now, the majority of people only have one car. So we really don't utilize the 2.25 and, you know, all of the one-bedroom units have one car. And there's probably a couple of two-bedrooms that have 2 cars, but there's a lot of those people that are just one person in those units. So I highly doubt we would need that, but
And again, that's related to the current makeup of residents in the building. It's the age restriction, so that's consistent with what we're seeing for an age-restricted project. Our senior housing project is the 1 space per unit. If the age restriction is removed, the 2 space, and that garage is eliminated, the 2 spaces per unit would be close to code, but it would require a departure from the code to justify that reduction. But again, possibly with a mixture of 1-bedroom apartments that are in the building, the 2 spaces per unit may be more excessive than what might be required for the development. Unlikely that you would have 2 vehicles per unit in that building.
And I'd like to add too that you know, our intention is to keep all of the 55-plus people that we currently have. I mean, they're great tenants and we don't want them to leave. We just want to open up the potential to have younger people who are 30 or 40 that, you know, may want a 2-bedroom, whereas a lot of the older people are single. They really just don't want to pay that much more for 2 bedrooms and extra bedrooms they really don't need.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Mr. Sager, you're saying, in your opinion, that you would be willing to eliminate the garages that you're requesting tonight? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, the 5-car garage on
Yeah.
the shared driveway. So if we got rid of that and we got rid of the emergency vehicle exit, there'd really be no shared driveway anymore. So it'd strictly just be, you know, the modifications we're making to the site, and there would be no impact on our neighbors. I think satisfying everybody here, because I think that's, everybody who's here that's objecting is objecting just to the usage of their driveway, which it's their driveway, but it always has been an easement and part of the PUD.
So if I'm understanding Mr. Simmons correctly, it's been reviewed by the fire department. The motion as it's stated would still require the fire department to give their final approval. And if they're saying that they don't need that access point, it would be removed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not in the fire department, obviously, but I think what I'm hearing tonight is that that's probable to be the case. But
Yeah.
I can't say for certain because I'm not the fire department.
Yeah, and that's fine with us. I mean, we'd prefer not to put the apron in. We'd much rather have that be landscaping and trees and, you know, nice looking stuff as opposed to a driveway. It was just there based on what our engineer thought we needed to do for emergency egress.
Okay. So before Mr. Sager adjourns again, I just want to double check with the committee here to see if there's any questions for Mr. Sager. All right, well, yeah, go ahead.
Just a thought. You know, you take out those those garages, you know, those 10 spaces. What about, you do that and kind of rework the parking that's, along the apartment there. Like slide those parking spaces closer to the building. And then you have an aisle, and then you can do a double, like some more parking spaces along the property line there.
I mean, we could look at that,
And then, so you take those out, then you're still not losing as many spaces if you do something like that.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to see where, because it's pretty tight right now, because I'm not sure where you're talking about adding parking
How about the
spaces.
the bottom
Yeah,
part,
it's the bottom part, yeah.
below?
You push those up closer to the building.
That area is currently constructed in the back of the site. So the,
You have to
yeah, there's, would be significant impacts to the site because right now, I think there's a grade difference between the back of the building and the parking aisle that's there as well. It's not, didn't have the grading plan on the image. And the back drive aisle, has been constructed in its current state. The main change he's looking to make is the garages that were approved at the
Right the other
the
spot
the
there,
left
yeah.
side of the image here, but the southern portion of the parking area.
That's already there, That
So
would
he's
be a
looking to move those garages somewhere else on the site.
yeah. Yeah, significant change if we do that. Okay.
Thank you, Google Maps.
Could you, yeah, you just need to come to the microphone if you wouldn't mind stating your name, please.
Yes, Jesus Cerrato. I'm with Scott on the project. I'm currently building the duplexes on the south side of the building. I was also part of the original approval process. I worked with Dave on the 8 duplexes that he has. I designed the homes for him and stuff like that. And then I also work on the building itself. So I'm kinda been on that from day one on the project. And I think that what Scott suggested should be a win-win for everybody, because if we're able to take 1-to-1 ratio on the 1-bedrooms, which we have 14 of them, and then we have 10 2-bedrooms, and we apply that 2-to-1 or 2.25 to that one, I think we more than cover as far as parking. Because as Scott mentioned, the 1-bedrooms only have 1 parking space currently, 1 car. But if we apply that same methodology to the 2 cars, we should be able to get 2.25 in that case. And we'll have even additional, because we have 34 units, 34 cars, and we end up with, I believe, 48 cars right now. So we should be more than sufficient. The only reason why we're doing this is to get additional parking for the residents, so that we don't have to have overflow parking to go onto the road. Because right now, the road is being used by the people across from us as parking in some cases. So with this, we'll keep all our parking within our site by having the additional parking spaces. But yes, that'll save money on Scott's part of it, and it takes away a lot of liability and everything else that the owners are, have an issue with it. So I think that that approach would work for everybody. If we close off the road and take out that parking space out, that would be a benefit for everybody.
Thank you very much. Did you want to comment further, Mr. Simmons, on the parking as it's being now proposed?
Yeah, so I guess if there's a proposed amendment to the, or a motion could be made, or for the proposed project that could amend the conditions as presented, I think what is currently proposed would be a reduction to the required parking for the site. So as rather than a 2.25 space requirement for the apartment building, it would be reducing to a 2 space requirement or parking ratio, which would provide a total of 48 spaces, both garage and surface, for the apartment complex. So that would be a zoning departure for the PUD, but would be certainly approved. Could be a condition that could be approved in the recommendation if the board is concurrent with that.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Sager, I did hear, I think it was Mr. Bailey that was asking, I'd just like some clarity personally on this issue of the mail and also on garbage pickups. Can you comment on that further, or is that something that you're not able to comment on?
Yeah, Yeah, I'm not sure, I may have missed that, but like our mail just comes to a mail like box thing on Haber Road. And then we have dumpsters on site for our garbage, so there really isn't any impact from our development onto either the common roads or, if there's another question, I'd.
Well, I heard Mr. Bailey comment on that, so I know you were cataloging questions. I happened to write that one down, that's all.
So right now, as you mentioned, we have for the apartment building, we have a mailbox right to the entrance to the right of the main driveway. So people have to pick up their mail there before they go into the building. There are also a dumpster on site, but that's a service that he pays because per Kerry, those are private driveways, so they cannot access for pickup or mail into those private ways. So on that side, it's gonna stay exactly the way it is. There's nothing that we can participate in that situation.
Understand.
It's our side, will be the same thing that you have right now. We have to take our garbage to that dumpster, and then we have a service that picks it up. Same way for the mail. I'm assuming that duplexes are also gonna have a mailbox that they would go to it, because they're not gonna go into the private driveways.
Thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it. All right, folks, so I think we have a little bit of a different application potentially now. So if I'm hearing correctly, the application would have us further review the access road with the fire department. That's what it says in item number 5. And then we're eliminating those garages per Mr. Seeger that would provide a change in the number of parking spots. So I think that's where this is headed now. Unless you say we don't.
We have to propose that change now for the parking lot spots?
Well, I think when I make the motion, I can just include that.
Okay.
But I'll be open-minded if we want to review that first.
No, I don't have any reason.
Yeah. So before I actually make the motion, I just want to double-check that there's no additional questions by the ZPA. All right, so let me get back to the motion here. So the chair is going to entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees an amendment to the Harper Point Planned Unit Development subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And as we just discussed, one of those has to be an underscore on item number 5 with respect to the fire department and whether or not an access road is required. 2, in addition, is the idea of elimination of the 5 garage spots that'll now just be no garage. So that's now the new motion.
Yeah, to clarify, so it'd be an elimination of the 5 garage parking spaces plus the driveway spaces in front of the garage that are in the northeast corner of the property. So it'd be a parking ratio of 2 spaces per unit would remain for the apartment complex.
Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Does everybody understand that? There's no confusion?
Yeah, the only thing I would want in light of recent events with this emergency thing, with the fire department, I've seen it where they have the access, where you have a gate that prevents it, people from going in and out, but in the event of emergency, they open it. Obviously, we don't plan for crazy things to happen. We're currently living in things that are happening that are unforeseen. I don't know. I just want to throw that out there as a possibility.
It's a fair
Again,
comment.
Doesn't have to be used, but in the event of something unforeseen, it's there. I'm fine with either way, but just throwing that out.
It's an important comment. So if I'm hearing correctly, Mr. Simmons mentioned this earlier, so I just want to double check again publicly with Mr. Simmons that it has been reviewed by the fire department. If I'm understanding the request correctly, if the access road was eliminated, the fire department is not concerned.
Correct. I discussed with the plan reviewer for the fire district the request. They reviewed the plan as currently provided, and they had no comments on the plan. They said it's approved as submitted. When I spoke to the fire district after their comments were received, they mentioned that, if it's there, they may use it, but it's not necessary. So if it is eliminated, they would be fine with it. But I'm My recommendation is to keep the condition in here so that there's still that formal review process to ensure that that is indeed their review of it, and then we can get something in writing to say that the connection is not necessary from that standpoint. We can eliminate that.
I agree. Okay, folks, does that motion make sense to you? Because I don't want anybody to be confused when they make their vote tonight about what we're talking about, the fire department and the elimination of the garages. So that's the two things it's the material change that we're making here now. Okay? All right, so I guess we would need a second.
Second?
Yeah.
So who made the motion?
Oh, I thought you.
You can't make the motion, somebody else has to make. Need a first, motion first, and a second. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, folks. All right, so now that we've gone down that path, now we need to call the vote. And so, Mr. Simmons, if you wouldn't mind calling the vote.
Trandell,
Yes.
Kretschmer,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Cassiter,
Yes.
Graziano,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. So, Mr. Sager, you have a positive recommendation now based upon the changes that we discussed tonight. And the way this will now work, sir, is that you still need to stay in close coordination with Mr. Simmons because this still need to go forward to the village board. This may be one of those issues where we approved it, but it could be on the consent agenda, but it could be pulled off the consent agenda because there are some concerns. And my best advice tonight, sir, would be to stay in close coordination because he'll be able to give you the meeting date when this will be reviewed next.
And just for the sake of the public that's here as well, I mentioned that date would be January 21st, so it's 2 weeks from this past Tuesday.
So I want to say thank you to the public that's here. We've appreciated your questions, your thoughtfulness, the professional way you've conducted yourself, so thank you very much. And unless there's any other questions, we're going to just move on to the next part of our agenda. I think Mr. Simmons was telling me earlier that there has been a meeting recently, and Brian, I think it'd be important for the ZPA to understand what's occurring over at Maplewood.
Yeah, give a couple updates, not just on Maplewood, but there's other projects that's been contemplated as well. So we'll have a few zoning projects likely coming before the board here in the near future. The Maplewood property, first off, the village executed an intergovernmental agreement with School District 26 back in August of last year, now 2024, where the village will be taking ownership of that property and has a partnership with the school district to relocate their transportation center to another property in town. So there will likely be a zoning petition related to the school district's transportation center here in the 2025, but also the village to distribute a RFP related to the Maplewood site. And the village is currently reviewing those three RFPs. Proposals were presented before the board this week, conceptual phase, and then we may be selecting a developer to move through the zoning process sometime this year. So more to come from that standpoint. Won't get into more details of the project because it's preliminary to this phase, but certainly there will be some cases coming down the pipeline related to that site. Also, there's another project that's contemplated on the western edge of town that went before the board back in December. Again, conceptual level, but there will likely be a zoning petition that will be submitted related to that project that will be before this board sometime this year as well.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And so unless there's any other questions or comments, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Happy New Year.